The Labour Party has adopted the APPG definition of Islamophobia. That same APPG report said talking about sex groomers was an example of Islamophobia. This is exactly why people are scared to tell the truth. And the lack of clarity means that innocent British Muslims are smeared by association. That is not fair, and only a national inquiry can solve this.
The Leader of the Opposition has been an MP, I think, for 8 years. Her party have been in government for 7.5 of those 8 years. She was the Children's Minister. She was the Women's and Equalities Minister. I can't recall her once raising this issue in the House, once calling for a national inquiry. It's only in recent days she's jumped on the bandwagon.
A single tweet from Elon Musk can spark a UK government investigation worth £10 million. Last week, the ruling Labour Party announced a reinvestigation into a notorious series of sexual abuse cases involving grooming gangs made up primarily of British Pakistani men abusing, exploiting, and pimping young English girls. It was a horrific case, and one that had been previously investigated in 2015 and 2022. Musk widely circulated the claim that over 1 million British children had been victims of grooming gangs, but this number has been disputed. A 2015 report found 1,400 victims in the UK city of Rotherham, while Grooming Gangs Task Force set up by the government in 2023 stated that it identified and protected around 4,000 victims in the past year. The true scale of the abuse is unknown, but the case has unfortunately been used as a political football over the years. Musk's outburst on X criticized Keir Starmer for his response to the grooming gangs during his time as Director of Public Prosecutions and called for the release of far-right leader and founder of the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson. The English Defence League was responsible for the anti-immigrant race riots in Southport over the summer, which saw mosques burned, people killed, and civil unrest. For victims of the horrific grooming gang abuse, however, the past few weeks have been complex. At once, a resurfacing of trauma, and also an opportunity to draw attention to the pressing issue of child sexual exploitation. To make sense of this, let's hear from Aisha Ali Khan, teacher, activist, and writer who grew up in Keighley, where the grooming gangs were operating, and saw her friends and acquaintances fall victim to the grooming gangs.
Some of those victims are girls that you grew up with, and you yourself in the 90s saw this whole saga unfold.
Oh, yeah.
How do you think these women feel, as you say, when this case is being brought back by a man who may or may not be entirely committed to justice? And how has that sort of been processed in that community?
I think, look, what do you know when you're 12, 13, 14? You don't really know much. And at the time, I can genuinely say we all knew about it, but it was never processed as abuse. It was never processed as this is something that's really wrong. And a lot of the sort of initial approaches were fun, were exciting, and were quite, nice. The girls were, they would be given money, they would be given nice presents. We're going for something nice to eat. There was a lot of wooing going on, and obviously that's part of the grooming process. And then after that, the abuse that then takes place, it's often behind closed doors. And I know at least two of my friends, two of the schoolgirls that I knew, basically dropped out. And, at the time in 92, 93, 94, it was, she's not coming to school anymore. Okay, let's make a few calls, house calls. Okay, nobody's there, nobody wants to, okay, so she doesn't want to come to school. And there wasn't really much of a follow-up. And now as a teacher myself who works in safeguarding, I look back and I think, oh my God, so many of these girls could have been saved.
The timeliness of Musk's interference. I mean, we all saw Trump's inauguration. We saw Musk sitting in the front row, Boris Johnson sitting relatively close by. It seems like there's this new generation of sort of global oligarchs and this case has been caught in that web of influence. Does that mean that there can be some good that could be done on the issue, even if it's come about in a politically expedient way?
I think the fact that there's a spotlight on the topic, if it was anybody else, there would be no questions about, oh, this is absolutely fantastic, about time. It muddies the waters when, for a layperson who really has no real idea of the context or has no real experience, and they're coming to this story for the first time, and they're like, well, what's the big deal? Elon Musk is doing this amazing thing, and he's succeeding where the politicians failed, he's succeeding where the authorities failed, the police failed, the social services failed, the doctors failed, and everybody failed. So why are people complaining about this? Why are people not embracing this and giving Elon Musk a knighthood and giving him a big big pat on the back? And the reason why is there's loads of hidden agendas involved. This is not just myself. These are lots of people, lots of the professionals who are wondering, okay, what is actually going on? What it is that Elon Musk is trying to achieve? Is he genuinely speaking out in favor of the victims and survivors, or is he using their horrendous experiences and their plights to malign and stigmatize and attack another a community that's already, we're constantly being asked to apologize and say not in my name, and whenever there's a terrorist attack, we're constantly expected to come out and condemn the attack and make all these comments, and because we're constantly having to justify or explain or condemn the actions of men that we have nothing in common with, and we are fighting ourselves. We're literally fighting misogyny within our own communities, our own religion, and so on. And then we're also having to deal with the fact that we're guilty by association.
Absolutely. And it's a kind of collective punishment. But just switching tacks a little, I'm curious what you think this new investigation is going to yield. Is it going to make any progress on the case, you think? And what exactly are they looking into?
Well, gosh, yes. What I would like them to focus on is how so many people were allowed to get away, and that would mean going through lots of notes that obviously exist from that time, speaking to officials, not just in the council, social services, the doctors, the teachers, every single person that knew something and didn't do anything about it. That would, for me, would be, and obviously more perpetrators, like the people that have got away with it as well. And in the ideal world, we just want this to stop.
As Aisha pointed out, this case has been used to question the right of Asians, particularly from the subcontinent, to immigrate to and be in the UK. To understand what this is like at the legislative level, let's hear from Lord Indarjit Singh, former advisor to the Home Ministry on Race Relations and first Sikh member of the UK House of Lords.
You've argued in the past that Britain has a moral obligation to welcome more refugees, and you've been described as helping bring Sikhism to the British breakfast tables. Do you believe the resurgence of the grooming gang story and the way it's been politicized threatens the multicultural project in Britain?
It does indeed. It's from both sides. The government and civil servants feel that religion and culture are so hot topics. There was always this British reticence to talk about religion. Now it's reticence to talk about religion and culture. Now, culture comes in two forms, as we were talking briefly. Naim Bevan, the founder of the Health Service, said whenever he thought of culture, he thought of bacteria, and bacteria can be good or bad. Now, there is good culture and bad culture. The good culture, especially from the subcontinent, is about family values, the care of the elderly. The really bad culture is that which emanates from religion religious texts written hundreds of years ago by ardent supporters of their new religion. And there are passages to show the wonder of their new religion that denigrate people and that denigrate women and do anything but make for a cohesive society,
So
the
you
one
do-
God of us all.
You
And
do
so-
see this story as a cultural issue.
Yes.
That is sort of how the conservative faction in the UK is painting it. But sexual abuse happens in a lot of communities.
Yes, but we should have the right to criticize that which demeans people and fragments society. That is the thrust, and that brings me to today, to the grooming gang story, where civil servants and politicians try and hide the issue by, first of all, diffusing the cause and the people responsible by talking about Asians, which is like talking about the Holocaust and saying Europeans are responsible for the Holocaust. If we want to cure anything, we need to get down to looking at its actual causes.
I think that is particularly difficult when there's this kind of high-level interference from billionaires like Elon Musk. As a member of the House of Lords, what has your experience been like with this kind of interference?
I feel there's a bit of cowardice because you can't say anything direct, that you can't criticize Trump or Musk because we have this special relationship and so on. But the reality is, if people behave like big bugs, they should be called out. The special relationship with the United States should transcend and moral obligations to fellow human beings.
This debate, as Lord Singh pointed out in the Union last night, has become about multiculturalism and its future in the UK. However, perhaps the more pressing question is, why do we continue to fail victims and only address the issue when the richest man in the world raises it, without knowing the context? In the Musk-Trump era, this is a question perhaps worth considering.